one of the things I said in my keynote was you need to commit to big things for big things to happen. They don't just happen on accident.
Yes.
And you're not going to just naturally produce something amazing. You do have to decide, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to make it happen, and I'm going to have some sort of external commitment, like I'm speaking at this conference, or I've got this workshop to deliver, or I've got this product to ship. And here's the day that I'm going to do that, and people are counting on me, so I've got to deliver. And having the attitude of being committed and keeping those commitments, I think explains a lot of my own personal success.
In this episode, Kent C. Dodds joins Tracy Lee and Rob Ocel at That Conference Wisconsin to talk about his transition from being an Angular developer to a React developer, as well as his ongoing projects, including the launch of EpicWeb.dev and some updates coming to EpicReact.dev.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Modern Web Podcast. My name is Tracy. You can follow me on Twitter at LadyLeet. I am joined by my co-host here today, Rob Ocel.
Yeah, hey everybody, Rob Ocel, VP of Innovation at This.Labs. You can find me online at RobOcel.
Yes, and we are joined here by Kent. Kent, hi.
Hello.
How's it going?
Going great. Thank you for having me.
Yes, you might know Kent on Twitter at Kent C. Dodds.
Yep.
And everywhere at Kent C.
Yeah,
Dodds.
pretty much everywhere.
Yes. And Kent, I don't know if you knew this, but when I was first getting into JavaScript, you were doing, oh my gosh, it was JavaScript Air.
Yes.
JavaScript Air was one of the first podcasts that I ever listened to.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, when I was first getting into tech. So
nice.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. That is a throwback.
I know, right? And now here we are interviewing you for Modern Web. But you probably inspired. You're one of the inspirations for Modern Web.
Well, that's awesome. I've been a guest on Modern Web before. It's a great podcast.
Yeah.
So I know I'm preaching to the choir, people who are listening, but subscribe.
Thank you for pushing that. Well, anyways, we're so excited to be here today. We are at ThatConf, and it's a great conference. It's actually called ThatConf.
It makes it really hard to talk about, but it's otherwise amazing branding. As this dot, we understand.
Yes.
I know. And then there's a company called That. Did you all know?
No way,
There
really?
is,
Oh my
yes.
goodness. When I'm typing this dot, sometimes I accidentally do type that dot, so I'll be extra careful.
That's amazing. And Ken, you've been to that conference before.
I've not.
This
This is the first time. I remember years ago, Joe Eames, I worked with him at Domo, and he recommended that conf, and I said, that sounds interesting. It's that conf, okay. And so finally I made it. I'm so glad to be here.
You know, that's so funny because Joe Eames is the first time I heard about that conf as well.
Oh, really? Yeah,
Yes.
he talked a lot about it. He loved it.
He was like, I bring all the kids, we get to the warp park, it's so cool. You know, you take a 5-minute break, you go down one of the slides, it's amazing. But it wasn't until Austin really this year that I saw it that I was like, you know what? We should go to that conf.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome.
Yeah, and you keynoted today.
I did, yes. It's over.
Yes, and I know, Rob, you were saying there's a lot of people in the audience really excited about the keynote, a 90-minute keynote.
Yeah, it's a long time. Talk a little bit about how you prepared for that. You know, when you sat down, did you know what you were going to talk about right away, or how long into the process before you kind of found your theme?
Yeah, well, so I was invited to Keynote months ago, and so it's kind of in the back of my mind, what do I want to talk about? Then, and Clark and I have this we chatted about it, and we get toward the end of our conversation, we're about to say goodbye, and I say, oh, actually, one of the last thing, how long do I have? 30 minutes or 20 minutes? And so, oh no, dude, that's a 90-minute keynote. Oh, and he said, well, but I'm going to take the first 15 minutes of that. Oh, great, thanks. 75-minute keynote. And I've done long talks before. One of my first talks was a 3-hour talk, but it was more of a watch me do a workshop sort of thing. And so, I've never done anything quite like this before. And initially I was just like, well, I have this talk that I gave at EpicWebConf earlier this year called Why the Web is Epic, or What Makes the Web Epic, something like that. And so I was like, okay, I'll just do that again and just add a bunch of demos and things. But then I watched a bunch of the other keynotes just to see what are they kind of expecting for these. And most of them were just people sharing their personal experiences and takeaways from that. So I shifted gears and went with how to be an epic web dev. It was just telling my history of how I got into tech and skipping things and like just targeting 16 takeaways.
Nice.
And that's how it got put together.
Devs, this one's for you. I've got 30 seconds to tell you about Wix Studio, the web platform for agencies and enterprises. So here are a few things you can do in 30 seconds or less on Studio. You can integrate, extend, and write custom scripts in a VS Code-based IDE. You can leverage zero setup dev, test, and production environments. You can ship faster with an AI code assistant. And you can work with Wix headless APIs on any tech stack. Time's up, but the list keeps going. Step into Wix Studio and see for yourself.
So how, for someone like you who's been doing education for much of your career, that's been doing content, been out in front talking to people for so long, was this different at all for you? I mean, like, you were sharing pretty personal stories. You were telling, a lot and being very honest about the things that were going on in your career. Like, was that a different take for you, or do you do this kind of stuff all the time?
Well, honestly, it felt a lot like little conversations that I have regularly. So after a meetup, I'll have people come talk to me, or after a conference, they'll come and talk to me and they'll ask me questions for advice. They're looking for the takeaways that I give today. And so I'll tell the story to kind of illustrate the advice I'm giving them. And so the talk today felt a little bit like taking all of those and putting it in just a single narrative to tell the story of all those things. So I haven't ever done anything like this in a conference setting in a talk, but I have this blog post called a decade in review, where I talk about everything that happened in the 2010s. And so that is like, I've already written about lots of this stuff. And then I added a couple of the cool things that have happened in the last 4 years. So these stories are top of mind for me, but it really was the first time I've told so many of them all at once.
I think that's really fun, though. I feel like it was basically an outline to your biography. So is the book next?
Well, I don't know. I have definitely written enough words for many books.
Yeah.
So I have thought about writing a book, or just like taking blog posts and turning it into a book. But
right.
I just am so busy doing other things. I actually have even written a fantasy novel.
I think you did the NaNoWriMo or whatever.
Yeah, I did
piece,
NaNoWriMo
right?
a couple of years ago. I'd love to get back to that, but I'm just so busy with other things. So
Yeah. And really excited to be participating and supporting the, oh my gosh, what is it? Epic Web Dev Camp?
It's Epic Web Camp.
Epic Web Camp. Okay, I'm very excited about that.
Yes, I think it's going to be so fun. And I'm really excited to have you there. It is a smaller event that's basically just hallway track for the whole thing. Stuff like this, and I am really stoked about it. And it's in an epic location too, so we'll have all kinds of fun outdoors things to do. So I am really looking forward to that too. Thank you so much for supporting.
Tell us about it and tell us the website and how to register and all.
So it's EpicWeb.dev/camp. It is sold out very quickly because there are only 30 slots. I'm hoping, though, if you're watching this or listening to this, you should still go and join the wait list, because I'm hoping I can convince the venue to give us more space, because they have plenty of space. And so if I can, then I'll open it up again to the wait list.
Nice.
So but that is going to just be a ton of fun. So absolutely come.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm really excited about it. I've done something very similar before. One of my friends, Alistair Cole, he ran something called BitNorth, and it was the same thing where it was a camp and we all got together and we all just, everybody talked about really random things. And I can't even remember what I talked about, to be honest. But I brought all my jewelry and I made jewelry on site.
How fun.
So are you going to have s'mores? Are there going to be s'mores?
Yeah, we absolutely will need to have s'mores.
You need some more s'mores.
Yeah, there are a couple places for fireplaces, and it's not like rough camping or anything. It's definitely a glamping experience. Your beds are like, it's hotel things. Like this would be a room for there. So and there are like common areas where people can gather and chat as late as you want to before going to bed. So it's going to be a ton of fun doing activities throughout the day and then just chilling in the evening around the fireplace, telling stories, all of that stuff. It's going to be great.
Well, Ken, I feel like people kind of know you. And
Some do, yeah. Some people know me.
We know you, and you're out on the internet a lot. So, what is the what should we talk about? What do people not know about you?
Oh, well, I told some personal things today that most people don't know about me.
Okay.
I talked a lot about my family. 11th child of 12, so I have a little sister and 10 older siblings, and that was just a really huge impact on who I am. And I don't know, I'm a pretty open person. My wife really is a very private person, and I'm very much the opposite.
It's good balance.
Yeah, it works out. She does prefer that I take credit for all of her good ideas. She's like, please don't tell anybody it was my idea. And that's just the way that she is. But I try not to do that. And then I've got my 5 children that I just love and adore, and they're everything. So I don't know. I can still do a backflip. That's another thing.
Wow.
Not a lot of people
Every
know.
year you check it, you're like, still got it.
I think, my last backflip I did was with my son. He's getting into gymnastics. And I think that was like 3 weeks ago I did that. Yeah. So I had to take a break. I was in a car accident and my ankle got hurt. So for like 2 years I didn't do it. And I'm like, I hope I didn't lose that.
Yeah. I mean, I can't believe, because I remember when you got into that car accident, but it seems like so long ago.
Yeah, it was 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it absolutely, I still feel pain from that, and that will never go away, I think. But
so
you get used to it. It's just the new way to live.
Well, I always...
in your keynote, you were talking a lot about your time at Domo. Mm-hmm. And like, what strikes me is you were telling a story about Dave Geddes, and then you're talking about Joe Eames now. Like, what was it about this place? Like, what a cool place to work. That it spawned so many amazing people. Like, what an opportunity, especially to intern there.
Oh, I know. I really feel so fortunate to have worked with these awesome people. And Merrick Christensen as well, just a phenomenal developer.
Yes.
He taught me JavaScript, really. He was just really, really impactful in my beginning years. So, I got seriously lucky, because these engineers are some of the best in Utah, especially at the time. Like, I was so fortunate. So, it was awesome. They put together NGConf, and I got to watch that. Aaron Frost and I ran the Google Developer Group for a while together. And each one of these engineers were really good. I remember just sitting around in the pit of despair with them, and they're like talking about these different things, Git strategies, and what a rebase is, and all sorts of. Joe taught me testing. Nice. And then I started testing my open source stuff and all of that. Joe tried really hard to teach us all testing, but testing was just not much of a thing for us over at Domo. But Joe tried really hard, and when he left, like, his last thing that he left us was like a whole perfectly set up testing framework that nobody used. But it was awesome to have that opportunity to work with these people.
So how you talked a lot in your keynote about like what it was like to be motivated, to put yourself out there, to stand up, right? And it was a lot of like making sure that you have that drive. But it strikes me, as we're having that conversation about Domo, and then you have a long relationship with Ryan Florence as well. Mm-hmm. People like Tracy. You have surrounded yourself, or been surrounded by very ambitious, very successful sort of people that share that attitude. Can you talk a little bit about maybe how that's also helped? You kind of keep your drive to keep going? Or do you think that is unrelated?
I think it's absolutely related. And that, of course, I lucked into working at the same place that all these high performers were working at. But I think that who you surround yourself with has a lot to do with your own choice. And people can absolutely self-select for being surrounded by the right kind of people, even if you don't happen to work with them. I had the privilege of working with Ryan Florence when we were both at Remix together, but we only did that because we associated so much elsewhere before, and I just put myself in his way for a lot of it. So I think that you can join the communities that the people that you are interested in associating with, the communities that they're a part of, and make that be a big part of your own growing and learning opportunity.
And it is true, right? They say the 3 people you talk to the most are kind of a culmination of who you are. Have you heard that? Is it top 3 people or something like that?
It sounds right.
Yes.
It definitely confirms all my biases, so yes.
And I definitely think about that when I'm hanging out with people. And I'm thinking, did I hang out with this person too much? Do I want to be this person? I'm not quite sure.
I think being intentional about the people we hang out with is very important. Yeah.
But it's funny because you are, everybody knows you as a great creator. And I can't remember, I can't remember the moment, but I remember there was this moment where I was like, Kent is so organized and he's able to just kind of like do this, because you have so much going on, right? You have kids and work and Twitter and just, a million things. And whenever I get in a rut and I'm procrastinating, I think, Kent wouldn't be doing this.
Oh, wow.
I do. That's how I pull myself out of it. I'm like, Kent is organized. Why can't I be organized? And
you're so sweet.
Then I guilt myself out of scrolling on Instagram when I should actually be doing something productive, because I'm like, Ken would be vlogging right now. He would not be scrolling.
Make us all feel better. Do you ever take a break?
I absolutely do. Yes, I have. So I actually don't have TikTok, but YouTube Shorts have sucked me in plenty.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's easy to get sucked in, and like late at night, you're just boom, 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 and then the battery is running low, and like, thank goodness. I am not strong enough. So yeah, I think early in my career, I was a lot more focused on progressing in things. And now, because I put all that work up front, now I can be have a lot more flexibility. And it works out nicely because now my kids require a lot more personal time with me than they used to. And so, you just grind really hard. You work super hard. And then you can have freedom later. And at least that was my experience. No, not at all. No. There are certainly times that I feel like I didn't communicate well enough with my wife, and I told that story in the keynote as well, or one of those stories. And I maybe sometimes that I worked harder than I needed to on something. Like it wasn't as important as I kind of convinced myself that it was. And certainly there are things that you work on really hard and then you find out when it's done that it actually it didn't matter. It didn't make much of an impact. But I think everybody's going to do those. Like you're going to make those mistakes in deciding what is priority, and things aren't always going to work out. And that's fine. But I think by putting that effort in, you learn how to do that in an effective way, and you learn a little bit more about what matters and what is the sort of thing that you need to put your weight behind. So no, I don't regret those.
If you don't do that, you don't work super hard to realize, hey, this didn't actually matter, then you will never learn that, or if you work super hard and then something did pan out, you'll never learn that, hey, I actually do need to work this hard for something to pan out and or not. So the choices that you make are better. Yeah,
and the more work you put in, the more opportunity there is for you. So like one of the things I said in my keynote was you need to commit to big things for big things to happen. They don't just happen on accident. And you're not going to just naturally produce something amazing. You do have to decide, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to make it happen, and I'm going to have some sort of external commitment, like I'm speaking at this conference, or I've got this workshop to deliver, or I've got this product to ship. And here's the day that I'm going to do that, and people are counting on me, so I've got to deliver. And having the attitude of being committed and keeping those commitments, I think explains a lot of my own personal success.
Yeah, but I like that idea that you do have to have that sense that the things that you're going to spend that time on have to be worth it. They have, they have to pay off. I think some people kind of take the wrong lesson from that, and they just think, oh, I'm going to grind, I'm going to do 80 hours, I'm going to do 100 hours. And what they're doing is not really making much of a splash. It's not really moving the needle. So it's like, what I like about your story and what you were sharing is that constant reassessment of like, is this time I'm going to spend worth it? Do I think it's worth it? You're right. I mean, maybe you thought it was worth it and then it didn't turn out to be that way, but you're constantly saying, I have these other commitments Am I giving enough to my family? Am I giving enough to my work? Is this worth that time? And I like that idea of a way to keep it in balance. It's not just about like, okay, I'm going to set my clock 16 hours, I'm going to be done. I'll just do whatever in that 16 hours. It's like, if you can be productive and efficient in 16 hours and get a lot out of it, then sure, go for it. But if you can't, then you might as well stop somewhere along the way, because you're not getting bonus points just for being in your seat, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't always know until you get there that, this was a waste of time. But that's okay. You can sometimes get bonus points just for demonstrating you worked hard. I remember a couple times that when I was at Domo, I worked super hard on this thing. It took me like 2 weeks to get to the end of it. And when we were done, it didn't work out. Actually, this happened at PayPal too. And I talked to my manager and I said, I'm so sorry that this spike was useless. And they were like, no, we didn't. Before you started, we didn't know if it was going to work. And now we know it doesn't. That's useful information. So it's not always a negative thing. Like the story that I told where I was looking for my wife's glasses, I didn't find them, but she was really happy with me working so hard to find them. And so there is still a reward just for working hard. And then of course, your own learning and experience as well is a big reason why you work really hard too. It's that work ethic.
How you work. You have to learn how you work. You have to practice it. And I think it's also about just setting your own, understanding what your pace is. Right. Until you get to a breaking point, you don't know what your breaking point is. So it's kind of like working out, right? You push yourself, and then can you actually push yourself to more and more and more? Or what does that actually mean? Or how can you be effective at that pace, etc. I feel like I'm talking a lot about working more, but I think, for me personally also, right? You just learn where and how you can be the most effective. I think surrounding yourself with good people as well is also really important, because you don't want to take advice from somebody who maybe isn't in the position that you want to be in on work ethic or anything like that, because they probably don't have the same mindset, right? They don't want to be where you are.
Yeah.
Have you ever talked about burnout before?
I don't know that I've talked about it very much. I have been asked about it.
Have you felt burnout? Have you ever been burnt out, or do you?
Yeah, so I've had some situations where I just felt overwhelmed, and that I maybe worked a little too much. This happened in open source stuff that I do a fair bit, and for my solution to it was very simple. If I don't want to do it and I don't need to do it for work, then I won't. And so people ask me, it used to be somebody would file an issue on my project and I would see it instantly and respond with, I'll have this fixed in 5 minutes and I'll get it fixed instantly. And that was fun for me for a while. But then after a while, I started to invite other people to do that instead. And then eventually it was just I'm not going to look at this at all because I'm not working on that project anymore. You can fork it. That's fine. I can't sustain taking care of 100 projects when that's not what I'm actively using myself. So if I'm not using it myself, or I don't just enjoy it for the fun of it, which the older I get, the less I enjoy it just for the fun of it, then I'm not going to do it. And so I really haven't had too much burnout. I do get discouraged sometimes, but I think that's different.
I think there's a lot of people, right, when we talk about work and this whole idea, I think everybody has different opinions about work-life balance, but when I hear this idea of pushing and this mentality, it's a very entrepreneurship mentality, right? You went off to do your own thing, right? It's always a question of, I think a lot of people look at that and they always question, well, what does that, how do I know? What if I get burnt out? What if I do this? And it sounds like your advice is just run, see where you get, and then figure it out from there. Because you're run to the top, you're at the top of the mountain. Once you're at the top of the mountain, you'll have enough time to figure out where you actually need to be, or what that actually means for you, or if you want to be there, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think too, when you're at the early stage of your career, you don't want to be looking at what late stage people are doing or later stage people are doing and say, I'm going to do that. because like they're at the late stage. So I'm not working, I'm still working very hard, but I'm not like working late into the evenings on a regular basis like I used to. I'm not doing those sorts of things because I'm at a different spot in my life. I'm in like maintenance mode now. I'm not in as much builder mode, I guess. So yeah, it's I worked a lot to get to the point where I can take a couple weeks off and everything is fine, and I can hang out with my family and stuff. So I wish that I could say that you don't have to grind and really work hard and like spend a bunch of time into this to be successful, but I maybe that's possible, but I can't say that because that's not what I did. My personal experience is working like a silly amount of hours, even late into the evening sometimes, to achieve. And so that's what I say. That I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just saying that's what I did, and that's how I made this happen. It wouldn't have happened if I hadn't done that.
So who are you looking at now? Or is there really nobody now? Are you far enough out there?
There's
that
definitely
no
people like
it,
yeah. Well, so like there are definitely people who are more financially successful than I am, obviously. And I am inspired by a lot of other creators and things too. The thing is, like, you don't know what people's success outside of that realm is. Like, you can't really see into their personal lives, and that is what matters most to me, is my family and those relationships. And so I just need to be like financially successful to this point so I can provide well for my family and be comfortable and have opportunities to take breaks and everything, not be worried about money. And then like I say, I'm a full-time dad and husband, and when I have time, I have to go to work to take care of them. Like that's part of the job. Yeah. So yeah, like I'm inspired by other people for sure, and looking in ways that I can improve my own craft. I definitely don't feel like I've just made it and can give up now.
Well, you have so many things going on, and maybe you should list off all your different properties. So all your different courses. Yeah,
so I started on Egghead. I published on Front-End Masters, and there are still courses on there. In fact, Front-End Masters had a deal with Pluralsight, so I'm technically a Pluralsight instructor also. Nice. And then I suppose you could say I'm a Udemy instructor too, because people will steal my stuff and upload it to Udemy too. Yeah, that's definitely
a TikTok influencer, a
maybe.
YouTube short creator.
But yeah, so I do have my YouTube channel, and then my real money makers, the things that I dedicate time to, are testingjavascript.com, EpicReact.dev, and EpicWeb.dev. And then with EpicWeb, I am onboarding other instructors and I'm running conferences. I helped with Remix and was a co-founder there and ran RemixConf 2 years in a row, and then it was EpicWebConf this year and EpicWeb Camp. Yeah, most everything is under the EpicWeb banner now. Although EpicReact is getting an update, so I do still work on those too. So
EpicWeb.dev, it sounds like that's the kingdom you're building, basically. So it doesn't sound like there's going to be another Epic something. Not
on the plans right now. I bought EpicWeb.dev, the domain, when I was talking with Ryan Florence and about like what the future was, and I was still at Remix. I was taking a break from full-time educating, and Ryan said something that just made me think, oh my gosh, I can't believe I don't have the domain EpicWeb.dev. Because I had EpicReact.dev, and that was a whole thing, and I was like, I want to go bigger than just React. So I bought that, and that was the moment that I was like, okay, I'm going bigger than React. I knew that I was going to, but yeah, for a long time. In fact, in my Decade in Review blog post, I say at the very end, like, what's in the future? And I say, I've been planning on this for a really long time. I basically want a KCD EDU, which is like, I don't know anything about programming, all the way to, I know everything Kent knows about programming. That was kind of the idea. And so that's what EpicWeb.dev is. So I don't have any other ideas. Anything that I produce that's about the web is going to go there. And if I teach anything that's non-web, it'll probably be like just some fun stuff I'm interested in that I'm not like doing for money. So we'll see with that. looks like if it ever happens.
That's awesome. Okay, I actually have a question that I don't know if anybody's ever asked you before. Why did you go from Angular to React?
Oh, yeah.
It's a long time ago. But
it was a while ago. So let's see, that would have been the end of 2015 is when I joined PayPal. And that was when I switched.
Because PayPal was using React. Okay.
Yeah.
So it was just a happenstance.
I looked for that though. So I was at a company called Alianza building an admin UI for a voice over IP platform. And it was in AngularJS. And Angular 2 was announced, and I remember watching that, and they were showing the tombstones, like all these concepts that you've spent all this time learning and dedicating your attention to, they're going away. And they really messed up, and they knew that after the fact. It's just, that was a very not the right way to present the cool new things that Angular 2 was going to be releasing. But I was like very into Angular 2, and like I had conversations with Mishko and Igor. In fact, actually, when I had I had a video call with them when I was at Ryan Florence's workshop, React workshop. It was like a week-long thing. It's called React Week. And I was at his workshop, and I'm like, I'll just step out for a second to have this conversation with the Angular team about forms and how forms work in Angular 2. And the work that I did in AngularJS kind of changed the way that forms work in Angular 2. So I was very deep into Angular, and also Angular Air was another podcast that I was running before.
Angular Air was the first one.
Yeah.
Yes, Angular Air was the first one I remember, and then I remember you switched on to JavaScript.
I switched to JavaScript when I left the Angular world. So I was very into it, but I started playing around with React, and I really liked what I saw over there, and started to get the big thing was with Angular, you have to learn Angular, and there's a lot to learn. Whereas with React, you spend like an afternoon learning some of the nuances with JSX and things like that, and then the rest of it is JavaScript. Even the things that people complain about now with stale closures and whatever else with the hooks, those are JavaScript concepts. And so it's not like you can just skate by not knowing those concepts and be a JavaScript developer. Like, those are important JavaScript concepts you need to understand. And so I don't have problems with those things, or I don't have a problem with the fact that those are a thing in React. So anyway, I just really appreciated that the better I get at React, the better I get at JavaScript. So I started looking for opportunities, and I actually interviewed and got an offer to work at Facebook. I thought, like, what better place than where React is coming from? But they, at the time, they didn't do any remote work, so I said no. My wife and I, my wife cried about the thought of moving to California. I'm like, well, I guess we can't do this. And I'm really glad that I didn't, because then I found James Charles reached out to me and said, hey, we're kind of, we had a little bit of back and forth on Twitter about like, well, I'd love to use this JavaScript feature, but it's mostly something you'd use in React. And then James said, well, you could come work at PayPal, and then you could do that, work with React. And I said, not if I have to move to California, because I just said no to Facebook. And he DM'd me and said, actually, we could make that work.
Yay!
And so I was like, sweet, now I can move on to React. And actually, I should mention, before I started looking, I talked to my boss at my company. I said, hey, I'm starting to get kind of into this React thing. And just, what are your thoughts? And he said, well, we need features. Angular is doing it for us, right? Like, it's still working fine. And I was like, yeah, I can't tell you that it's a good business decision to switch to React. And so he said, yeah, so let's just stick with Angular then. And I said, well, just so you know, I don't want to stay here anymore to work on Angular. I want to do React stuff. And so he knew, and it was fine and great. And they ended up basically having to rewrite anyway, because that was the Angular 2 upgrade. So, but I was gone by then. So anyway, that was, and the fact that Angular 2 was taking so long to get released, and I know a lot of people will complain about that. React has a lot of those same problems, like how long it takes to launch stuff. But the big difference is that when React comes out with a new feature, you can still use the old stuff and incrementally adopt, where Angular, it's like, it was the whole thing. But the other thing is that they introduced Angular, and they're like, all these concepts go away because it's so much simpler. And then they slowly introduced those concepts again. And the nail in the coffin for me was modules. I was like, JavaScript's got modules. We've got them. Why are you bringing modules back to Angular? And I was like, no, I think I want to move on. So there you go. That's the story.
That was a really good story. But yeah, thank you. Well, definitely check Kent out if you haven't met him yet on Twitter at KentCDodds, and EpicWeb.dev is probably the biggest one that
definitely head over there. And if you are into React, EpicReact.dev is getting an update very soon. You'll want to see that. In fact, I just launched a tutorial that's where we build useState and useEffect from scratch. Nice. And it works within a React app. So like you can really understand how hooks work. And that is a free tutorial that uses the workshop app and everything. So it's a full experience. You get to see what it's like to go through a workshop there. So go check that out. And then in September timeframe, we'll be launching V2.
Yeah, and then hopefully we'll see you all at one of the Epic conferences.
Epic Web Camp in the fall and Epic Web Conf in the spring.
Yeah, okay, awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you, Kent, for taking some time out of your day.
Thank you.
We'll see you all next time.
Bye.